And we're live with another SEO Leadership webinar. Today we have the Charlie Whitworth of Whitworth SEO. How are you today, Charlie?
Good, thanks, guys. You guys all right?
All good.
Friday feeling,
Friday.
you know.
Yeah, Friday feeling, definitely.
Okay, Charlie, well, we're just going to jump straight into today. So could you tell us about when you first went into a leadership role? Did you know how to lead at that stage, or was it something you had to learn just over the period of that role? And did you have imposter syndrome whilst doing it? And how did you combat that?
So, yeah, no, I didn't have any leadership training at all. I'd worked at the agency I was at for quite a while. I'd built up a good rapport with the team, and I got a promotion. And I was lucky that the people within my team I was quite good friends with them, and like they kind of wanted me to lead them anyway. It kind of naturally had happened anyway. And then obviously as the agency grew that I was at, and obviously it became a bit more official that like, right, you are in charge of these guys now. But I was quite lucky in that respect, because it's like you go to a new role as a boss, you've got to get to know everyone, excuse me, and get to know what kind of, how they work and things. So I was quite lucky in that respect, and I think it allowed me to kind of learn those leadership skills in a bit more chilled environment, really. Yeah, I had massive imposter syndrome because there was people in the team that were like better at tech SEO, for instance, than me, but they weren't necessarily leaders. So, I because I was quite good friends with them, I was able to deal with that in terms of, look, I know you're superior tech SEO, but they need more support with like strategy and client meetings and stuff. So no, I didn't have any training in that, and it came quite naturally. But I think the environment I was in helped that, and yeah, I mean, still get imposter syndrome to this day. So yeah, no, that was definitely a big thing. But that was helped a lot by the fact that I was good friends with my team. So
yeah, I suppose that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And Charlie, you just mentioned there that it naturally happened. You naturally became that leader. Like they sort of wanted you to become that. Do you think, looking back, that was there any sort of specific traits that you had that sort of made you be that guy, rather opposed to somebody else who might have been sort of technically stronger?
Yeah, I think as a person, I do tend not to be bossy, but I do try to lead and to help people out. And you'll know the SEO industry in general, I'm always quite willing to share my knowledge generally, really. So I think that helped. So yeah, I think so. I think it was just with SEO, obviously, it's not just about being the best SEO, is it? It's about personality, mentorship, kind of whether or not you work well as a team, and then obviously in terms of when you work on projects together, I've kind of helping each other out. I had quite a bit of camaraderie in the team, as I say, because I was really close to those guys, and I think at the time the agency was looking for someone to kind of take the bull by the horns and lead it, really. So yeah, I think I was really lucky with that, really, and not a lot of people would have that scenario, I think. And especially if you were a bigger agency, the agency we were at, it was a pretty cool culture, and the MD and people were there were very pro that. Whereas if you were at quite a corporate agency, I won't mention any by name, but it could be a completely different environment to that. So it would have made that a lot more tricky. So I think a lot of things fell into place, really, in terms of that.
Awesome. Just reeling it back to the topic of imposter syndrome, I just recently saw an article that you had done on imposter syndrome. And it is quite a hot topic at the moment that a lot of SEOs are talking about and dealing with, especially in leadership positions. Do you have any tips on how you've been handling imposter syndrome, and maybe from your article, any sort of conclusions that you've drawn from it?
So I think what I learned quite quickly was to stop trying to look for like massive silver bullets and try and find these amazing tactics that are going to suddenly make you like this famous SEO, and to stop trying to compete with some of the people that I saw as like, kind of my kind of mentors and kind of people I wanted to emulate, because as I say, there's so much more to it than just doing the best tech SEO or doing the best content marketing. It's how rounded you are as an individual. So yeah, I think I learned that quite quickly, and that'd be a good piece of advice for young SEOs, is you don't have to be looking for these amazing new tactics. It's about doing the right things in the correct way, and being good as working in a team and supporting your team. And yeah, I think sometimes with SEO you can overthink it, and some of the tactics that I'm still doing now, that I was doing 12 years ago, are still working. They're not silver bullets, but if you do them right, they still work. So don't feel pressure to compete with there's some amazingly talented people out there on Twitter and LinkedIn publishing these amazing guides and stuff, but you don't need to be that person, right? You just be the SEO that you want to be, and stay true to that, really. So yeah, don't overthink it and stop trying to search for the silver bullets, really.
Awesome. And just to quickly build off of that that conversation as well of not feeling like you need to compete, have you felt that pressure come from AI and the changes with AI as well throughout this year?
Yeah, I think I've kind of switched my position on it quite a bit over. So when it first came out, I was like, it'd be cool, it'd be fine. And then obviously, you know, developments were such that, right, you've got to take this seriously now. I think that is going to be a huge pressure. I think tech SEO is going to make a big difference because we can't get away from the fact that it's going to automate a lot of the stuff that we used to build clients for, and that's cool. I think the way I'm looking at it is great if we can automate the stuff that's taken loads of time and allow us to focus on strategy, right? And looking at what competitors do. Some of the stuff you don't usually get time to do that is really useful. Then I'm not too scared about. But in terms of young SEOs now coming into the industry and feeling imposter syndrome, I don't think AI is a threat that a lot of people think it is. I think it's going to be utilising it in the correct way. But I also, I've mentioned a few other talks, I think there's going to be a lot of cleanup work for SEOs to do off the back of AI. So, you know, it obviously is going to take the place of a lot of the work, but I think it's going to create a lot of problems that SEOs can fix. So yeah, don't be too daunted by it. You know, do your reading, work out to use it properly. But yeah, if it allows us to get on with kind of the more exciting strategy stuff, then I'm seeing it as a positive, to be honest.
Awesome, cool.
Perfect. And see, for I suppose personally yourself, but then when you were managing a team in the past, how did you sort of ensure progressive learning and consistent growth? Because obviously the SEO industry changes daily. There's always something new that comes up. But so how did you ensure that your team and yourself now that you're always growing and learning?
So I always encourage my team to bring new ideas to the table. I think there's always an element of self-starting in SEO. Like, you've got to be motivated yourself to keep up to date. I was always happy to sit down with the team and let them know what I've been reading and what I would recommend for them. So if they're more technical or if they're more content, then I would recommend different things. We used to sit around on a Friday in the team. We used to watch the Whitworth Fridays together and chat about that. As I say, going back to, because we were quite close, sometimes we'd sit in the pub and talk about it, you know, over a beer and stuff like that. So I think it happened quite naturally, and my team were always quite passionate about SEO, like I was. Because I think when I was recruiting, I was looking for people that were passionate about it, like I was. So that was natural that the team was similar to me in that respect. But I think with everyone, you can't force them to learn in the same way that you do. Like, I'm very social media. I'll read the latest articles from all my favorite SEOs. You know, I'll read all the same. You know, we read similar books and stuff. But you can't expect your team to do it the same way. I think what I would do is always be checking in on a weekly basis of, right, you know, we saw this announcement, what are your thoughts? I'd be open to being wrong as well. Like, I'd never be like, right, well, no, that's wrong, this is the way it is. I was always open to that discussion. So yeah, I think an element of self-starting, but then nudging people gently in the right direction if you think there's something that they should be reading and staying on top of. And obviously at the moment, it's probably more topical than ever with like so many updates and AI and all this kind of thing. And obviously, when I first started in SEO, there was no guidance, and you know, it was a lot more basic than it is now. So it was a bit simpler. So it's a minefield of information now. There's so much out there, you know, on social, from Google, from experts. So yeah, I think it's on each person based on, you know, what kind of person they are, is realism the best way that they like to learn, and then just essentially as their boss, making sure that you think they're digesting the right stuff, and that essentially that they're implementing the right tactics, really. So.
Perfect. And just sort of building off that, like the individualism within a team, how would you effectively delegate tasks to certain team members? So you're not just giving, you know, whatever team member has the strongest point, say in tech, giving them all those oriented tasks, that you actually can encourage people to sort of do something they don't know so they can build skills up. How do you effectively delegate the tasks?
So yeah, that would differ from role to role. So obviously, if you've got a junior who's still quite raw, you know, you can't just let them go wild, because you know you could end up with some mistakes. And then also senior people, you know, you need to trust their judgment. And even if you don't completely agree, I had that with a colleague of mine at Bank all the time. We used to disagree quite a lot, and I would be like, right, fine, you know, it's your campaign. I wouldn't let them do anything dangerous if I knew it was definitely going to cause problems. But if it was something borderline where I'm like, well, you know, go for it, then I would give them that creative freedom, as long as I didn't think it was going to impact performance too much. I think again, you just got to get to know your team. You know, some people like, you know, are quite introverted, some people are quite extroverted, and you have to manage them in a different way. In terms of the output, I think we would work very collaboratively. So, if there was a task that you knew someone was perfect for because they were really good at it and they enjoyed doing it, which is key, then you could work on each other's clients a lot. That's the way I managed it. But then you have to be careful because if someone's owning a campaign and they want ownership of that campaign, and then you start delegating tasks away from them, you need to check that sits right. It was never an issue because I think we all knew our strengths. Like, I had an amazing tech SEO in my team who I said was better at tech than me, who would be perfect for certain tasks. So again, I know I keep saying it, I was quite lucky because we all got on really well. We all knew which the strengths where it didn't create any issues, but I guess it could in a different environment. But collaboration is key, isn't it? And if you've got a kind of functional team where everyone knows their strengths, it shouldn't be an issue. But you've got to build that up and develop it over time. So yeah, I think on a junior level, give them a bit of creative freedom, but making sure you're quality checking things to make sure that there's no issues. On a senior level, yeah, you need to just let people develop, and it's fine for them to have a different opinion, do things differently. And then the performance tends to speak for itself. And I guess you get learnings from that in terms of whether it worked and whether it didn't. And that's a learning curve for you as a manager and also for the person responsible. So yeah, I think there's a lot of caveats to that, depending on the scenario really. But generally speaking, I think you've got to give people a bit of creative freedom and allow them to learn on the job a little bit with SEO.
Brilliant. And Charlie, you touched on a few different sort of occasions with hiring people who are sort of equally as passionate as you. And obviously you mentioned you got very lucky with your team, but what would be sort of one fundamental approach that managers should take to ensure that they do keep that sort of strong company culture?
So yeah, I think it depends on the environment. Sometimes it's busy and people get stressed and you've got deadlines and targets. I think people work differently in that environment than when things are just ticking over nicely and everything's going really well and all the clients are happy, which is, I wouldn't say rare, but it's not always like that. I think it's just respect really. Like if you all respect each other, and as I said, if you're all aware of each other's strengths and you're adult enough to accept that like maybe someone else in the team is better at certain discipline of SEO than you, then I don't think it's really an issue. I think what I've experienced, especially with some younger team members, is that it gets very competitive, and there's sometimes it could be two people kind of competing for a promotion or for some kudos. Then even myself, I was involved in scenarios like that where and it goes back to that silver bullet, isn't it? It's like what can I do to try and impress more than this person? I just think that environment can get quite toxic sometimes. We're trying to avoid that because I think it's more impressive to a boss and to a client and to everyone really to see people collaborating and helping each other. So I think kind of teaching that kind of respect element when people are younger, saying look, you don't need to be wowing me with like these amazing new tactics. What we need to be doing is driving performance, and working together collaboratively. So yeah, I guess respecting each other really is the key answer to that really.
Perfect.
Cool. And then just reeling back to Jay's question about teams and team structure. When you are in a space as a team lead, happy with your team and your team's performance, how do you get to a point where you are ready for your next hire? And get to that point where you're ready for growth?
So I guess when I was in that situation, when I had my largest team, which was a team of about 14 at an agency, I think that was really based on commercials within the business that I was kind of aware of, but I was never in control of. Obviously, it was new business and retention and things like that. I would always be asking for more stuff, in meetings, because with SEO, there's always more you can be doing, right? There's always ways that you can be pushing things further. So, in terms of when the time is right, I'm learning that now, developing my own kind of little agency now. That finding that sweet spot of how busy in commercials to make a hire is really hard. It's really hard. So now I've got a bit more sympathy for my ex-bosses now when I was knocking on the door asking stuff. But in terms of the right time commercially, but in terms of in terms of the dynamics of the team, I always like to make sure we had all bases covered. We'd have a tech, someone who was expert in tech, someone who's expert in content, and with myself being fairly versatile, being quite techy and quite content driven, I guess I used to fill in the gaps. So it wasn't too much of an issue for me, but I was always asking for more resource, as most of us are, to be fair.
And when you were agency side, obviously you're talking about always asking for more resources and stuff. How did you keep effective communication in between different departments as well, just to ensure you're all going for the same overall business goal?
Yeah, so that was not tricky. So obviously, when I went to Bank, which is the agency I was at for most of my career, like we were quite a small SEO team. Then I was in charge of building that team out. We ended up being an organic search team. So within that, we had SEO, content marketing, and then kind of copywriting. So essentially, links, content, and copy. And they were kind of sub teams of a team. So that was key of making sure we were all aligned. Yeah, and it was regular meetings. We all sat quite close together. But at the same time, we always used to crack on with our various pieces of work. I think, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of generic answer, really. It's just regular meetings. We had Trello boards set up for, liaising on tasks and things like that. But I think the key was at the start, we set quite clear KPIs of what we were trying to achieve, and everyone knew their part in that. So obviously, the content marketing team knew that it was essentially creating copy that was going to work from an SEO perspective. The digital PR team obviously knew. I mean, digital PR was quite new then as a concept, really. Knew their jobs. So I think it was setting the clear KPIs at the start and regular liaison. But yeah, again, I'd say well, that's really we were all quite sat close together and all quite pally. So we kind of all knew what we were trying to do. But I have worked in agency environments before where everyone does work very siloed, and that rarely works. So I guess that was my job. I did it quite naturally, I suppose, by creating a good environment within the team and encouraging people to collaborate and stuff. But yeah, as I say, everyone in the team was dead passionate, so it was quite easy.
Charlie, you mentioned about growing out teams, obviously with that agency, and obviously now you're thinking about it yourself as well.
Yeah.
What's the preference? I don't know if it's changed from when you were going out with the agency or compared to now, but in terms of working from the top down or sort of the bottom up, getting somebody junior who you can sort of share all your knowledge with, or get somebody who's a bit more senior and he can sort of hit the ground running a bit quicker then?
So what's changed in my current situation compared to before?
Is your current situation the same compared to what it was in the agency, or?
No, it's completely different, obviously. So, I mean, the agency I worked out, as I say, it was great, and I loved the culture and the setup. It was an agency setup. My setup now is very different. I'm definitely not trying to criticize agencies, but I've decided that my model is kind of more consultancy, not paying for certain things that you would have to at an agency, kind of administrative stuff and meetings and client services and stuff, because I think that is right for some clients. For some clients, they need an agency and they need that support. So in terms of me not building my team out now, it would be more of someone who I could mentor, who would want to learn from me. And in return, I would just get some help, really, because at the moment, running clients, new business, all the kind of things of running your own business, as well as servicing your current clients and looking for new clients and retaining your current clients on your own is hard. So yeah, at the moment I'll be looking for someone who I could essentially hopefully mold into someone similar to me, really, who's more interested not more interested, but we deliver the strategy to the clients really than the reams and reams of output. So yeah, it's a completely different proposition, and yeah, it's been a tricky time to try and find that person as well at the moment. So if anyone's listening, then yeah, get in touch.
Through us.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously it goes without saying.
Just to build off of that, as an SEO consultant, do you have any tips on communication through to clients, especially? I know from an agency, it might be different in the dynamics and explaining a marketing strategy versus an SEO consultant. So do you have any tips on how you go about that?
So, I mean, I've essentially assumed the job of like client services for my own company. Obviously, going from an agency where to even speak to the client, usually you would go through client services. Sometimes it was quite strict, like you go to your account manager and they'll deal with it. Although some clients used to come directly to me for like techie questions and stuff. At the moment, I mean, I tend to, because it's my consultancy, and if I've got a client in now, it's because they've spoken to me, they want to work with me, and essentially they're kind of bought into me and my strategy. So it's quite easy, really, because they already trust that the strategy is correct. And usually it'll just be like talking about performance and impact and how things are going. But yeah, I mean, I try to keep it quite informal, personally, because that's the kind of whole ethos of my company, really, is to be less corporate and a bit more personable. So no tips, really, just I don't try to upsell too aggressively. I tend to just stay true to the original KPIs and the original projects, and essentially just try to offer the best service I can, really. And essentially I've become a bit of an arm of their team, really. It's not just title tags and content, it's that consultancy piece. It's like sometimes on Slack, it will just be a question like, we're thinking about building this section, should we do it? Is there opportunity here? And they get that kind of instant feedback. So no, it's really just kind of sticking to my personality, really.
Awesome.
Perfect. And I suppose, well, it goes with every industry, but there's always ups and downs. And one question I love to ask is, how do you actually say you're going real well for a few months, you take a few months hit? How do you stay motivated essentially the entire way through? Because it's pretty easy to stay motivated when things are going well, but when things aren't going so well, how do you keep the motivation up to keep on pushing forward?
Yeah, I mean, really, I don't want to sound too arrogant about it, but I'm pretty confident in my strategy and my process I've developed over the years. So I've had those situations this year. I think sitting tight, and it's a hard conversation to have with clients to say, look, just sit tight. But there's so much going on with the algorithm. It's different sites react in different ways, depending on platform, depending on competition, all sorts of things. I know that my strategy works, right? It can sometimes take a bit longer. And very rarely if ever I'm having a situation where it hasn't come to fruition, as long as things are getting implemented and the client's doing the things that you recommend. But yeah, I think the question you're asking is a really important one. As I'm not a natural kind of client services person, I'm never quite sure how to play it, but it's essentially that conversation of like, look, please just trust the strategy, kind of sit tight, and then it does tend to come good. But I guess it's setting those realistic KPIs and expectations at the start. So I would if it's a client where I know their authority is low, competition's massive, but I do believe that we can get there, then I'll be honest and say, look, this might be like month 9 to 12 we start to see these results. If it's one where I can see that actually the opportunity is fine, is pretty realistic that we can optimize the site and get the results, I'll be quite ambitious. But that's that kind of sales bit, isn't it? It's like you want to get the sale in, but I guess it's obvious our guys don't overpromise. I'd be ambitious, but if it's going to be tough, then let the client know that at the start, right? Just manage those expectations, because if other people are going to promise them that and it's not realistic, then they'll come unstuck. So just be honest with me and just be sensible with your KPIs. And if you do believe that you can do it, then there's no harm in being ambitious. But maybe tell the client that, to say, look, this is quite an ambitious forecast, but I do think that as long as we get all our tech and then get all that recommendations implemented, that we can do it. So it's a hard thing to tell a client to do, just to sit and be patient really when they're paying good money. But it does always tend to come to fruition eventually. So
perfect.
Cool. Just reeling back to the question about you're looking for another SEO to join. When you are looking to build up your consultancy and your team, are there any characteristics or traits, particularly maybe 3, if you can give us, that you look for in an A player, especially from joining a consultancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of cliche term. I do want them to be passionate about it. Like, I think I've interviewed people before where they've kind of even intimated on the call that they think they're interested, they're not quite sure. They've even said stuff like, I'm a bit disillusioned about it at the moment. I'm like, well, if you're disillusioned about it, then it's gonna be hard for me to invest my time into developing someone that doesn't really want to. So the passion for it, I say passion for it, it's not like being on Twitter all the time and stuff like that. I guess it's are you generally interested in tech and the world, the SEO world, and I don't think there should be a requirement to take your work home with you, but there's probably a requirement that you're still interested in the general world of kind of digital marketing and tech outside of that. Self-starting really as well. I mean, my hire I take on is I will mentor them and I will be happy to teach them, nearly everything that I know, not all of it. But I think I'd want an element of self-starting from them, that they can still show some initiative to know how to kind of to aid their own development as well. So not just you've got to teach me everything and that's going to be it. You need some kind of some leeway there. And another one, what else do I look for? I guess in person, kind of back in the day when I started SEOs had a bit of a reputation for just being kind of nerds who sat in the corner, didn't want to talk to anyone, just wanted to sit and do their tech SEO audits, and that's it. I think it's fine to still be like that. If you're just going to be a tech SEO, that's fine. I think for my model, you need to have those kind of soft skills as well and be able to liaise with clients and I guess explain the strategy in a kind of eloquent way to the clients, so that they, when things are tough, that they maintain kind of belief that you can do it. Because a lot of the time the work going on was really great, and I've had just when I was agency side as well. But if you're not conveying that properly and not showing the passion for it and not kind of reassuring the client that all this work's going on and it's going to have that impact, then you can't really be surprised if they kind of get a bit disillusioned. So yes, I guess being able to convey your work in a, doesn't have to be passionate, I suppose, eloquent and articulate way, so that the client understands what you're doing and why.
Perfect. On the flip side of that question, is there anything you actively avoid when you're looking for someone?
Not really, no. I'm trying and have an open mind. Like, you quickly get a good kind of impression of the personality of the person. You have a chemistry call first, right, to check, right, it's to kind of qualify it. And and like you guys will know, to have a few stages of the interviews. By the time you get to that third stage, you've got a good perception of their ability. And I do try to have an open mind, and not just disregard someone due to any kind of preconceptions. So no, I'm pretty open-minded really, but just the things I've already mentioned, really, a good mix of, and I guess it's important to say, like, the ability is probably less important than the attitude and the willingness to learn. Like, if I think that someone's not got that many skills, but I can quickly help them with that, and I think they really believe in it, like in the role with me and in their career, then I'd be happy to take on someone that has quite a low level of experience, because I do enjoy the mentorship and the training side of things anyway. So yeah, I think I'm certainly not so much as set quite rigid kind of aptitude tests, and if you don't know all these kind of all these things, then you can't get past the first stage. No, I think it's about trying to scout the talent, really.
I agree.
And on the topic of hiring or getting into a new position, when somebody does move, whether it's a sort of executive level into a management role, or even just moving company into a new management position, what sort of advice would you give to somebody to sort of incorporate into their first sort of 90 days off that new role?
Yeah, so if they've just gone from like exec to manager, I think, in my experience, it's not, if you've promoted them to that level, you think they're ready, and you've had that conversation with them and you've established that they think they're ready, it's usually been pretty seamless, really, because the work you're doing doesn't really change, right? You might have a few more responsibilities in terms of, you might have a few more people working under you. I think that's probably the biggest one. The SEO work doesn't really change. What you have to learn to go from exec to manager, in my experience, is how to manage people, maybe budgets, those kind of things which aren't SEO. So yeah, keep an eye on those for them. Obviously, I'll be having one-to-ones with those people to check they're happy, and they'll be having one-to-ones with their people under them. So yeah, I guess keeping an eye on that they're dealing with that change. Okay. But in terms of the actual SEO stuff, really, I mean, you might have a few more clients, a bit more responsibility in terms of performance, but your actual day-to-day activity SEO wise probably wouldn't change. So yeah, I guess just keeping an eye that they're dealing okay with managing people and some of the more administrative stuff as well.
Perfect. And just to sort of round off the whole conversation on leadership, could you give us a few qualities the main qualities, the fundamentals of being a good leader, whether it's in-house, agency side, whether you're out on your own doing consultancy, freelance, what qualities do you actually need in order to move forward, in your opinion?
That's quite hard to not say something too cheesy here, but it's like just I don't know how to swear, but like don't be a dick, basically. Like help. Like it's so much easier to pull someone up than it is to push them down. Like in my experience with managers above me, if it was like they just loved to criticize or throw their weight around and show that they were superior or more experienced, that's turned me off straight away, and I would tend to go in a different direction, whether or not it was within the business or even leave the business. Like it's just a massive brick wall, that kind of behavior. So I said all the best leaders and managers I work with have been supportive, collaborative, and happy to share their knowledge and their experience. I think that's dying out a bit now. You're not so much seeing those kind of leaders anymore, thankfully. But yeah, I think that's a big quality, is just making your team feel comfortable and being approachable. I mean, I'm super approachable, and I end up being quite good mates with most of my colleagues, and that helps so much. I started with that at the start of the podcast, having that kind of rapport and culture within your team. So yeah, essentially, just even if you are massively experienced or better, however you determine that, then I guess not trying to make your team too aware or feel like that is probably good. Collaboration is key as well. Knowledge sharing and being happy to do that and putting your time into it. I think probably my biggest criticism of myself as a leader historically was I used to try and take too much work on myself. I was a bit of a control freak. If I had a campaign that I really loved, I would be quite protective of it because I just wanted to, I don't think get the glory, but I always wanted to make sure it succeeded. So I would just try and own it. But I think looking back, I wish I hadn't been quite so much like that, because the team members might have benefited from some experience to those bigger clients and stuff. So I guess that's another one as well as a leader is, don't be scared to delegate and share campaign and activity around and kind of share the success together rather than trying to own the big glamorous clients as well.
Perfect, Charlie. Well, that about wraps it up. That half an hour flew in.
That's gone fast, isn't it?
Yeah, it really has. We'll give a shout out to Whitworth SEO. You'll see all the links in the posts, and enjoy your weekend, Charlie.
Yeah, you too, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Have a good one, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.